Good morning and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be another quick tips video. This one is all about drafting. Now, I am not in the drafting stage for any of my projects right now. I have a couple in developmental editing stages, a couple in line edits and proofreading stages. But I do plan, once my short story collection is finished and the second Draco and Luna novel is finished, to get back into drafting some more short stories and the third Draco and Luna novel. Main tips for drafting a novel, short story, novella, whatever you're drafting. Tip number one is have a plan of what you want to write that day. It doesn't have to be a full-on, complete outline, chapter by chapter, scene by scene. There are some novels that I do that with. My full-length novels for the Draco and Luna series, I have chapter by chapter and scene by scene outlines because they are typically longer longer novels. Typically, my longer novels, I have scene by scene outlines, and I can range anywhere from about 50 scenes to about 75, 80 scenes. And that will take me right up to about, or should take me right up to about, a 75 to 80,000 word novel. For my novellas, I just use a quick chapter outline. So I do Act 1, I'll have 6 chapters, and I'll just write the main point of each chapter. For my short stories, I typically just write like a synopsis of what I want the story to be and go from there, because my short stories typically hit around the 7 to 10,000 word mark. So I don't need a full-on outline. But if you're someone who doesn't outline or doesn't like to plan, even just a simple sentence of, I want this to happen next, or just knowing in your mind what will happen, what's coming up in your story, can be a big help when drafting. Tip number 2 is try to have a plan of how long you plan to write for. For me personally, during the day when my husband is at work, I cannot sit down and write for 2-3 hours at a time. I typically do 15-20 minute kind of sprints while I'm writing, because that's pretty much the length my kids will kind of be quiet and stay occupied with other stuff before I have to, before they want to be played with, or before I need to change them or feed them or whatever, wherever we are during the day. My third tip is, if you are stuck in a specific scene or chapter, it is okay to jump around. I'm not great at this. I, for the most part, prefer to write chronologically, so from chapter 1 onwards. But in the second Draco and Luna book, when I was drafting it, I got stuck on the last act because I wasn't quite sure what all I wanted done, so I just kind of jumped between scenes that I knew and scenes that I wanted to write, and then went back and filled in the rest. I have a helper today. So while I was drafting the second Draco and Luna book, I ended up jumping around at least the last act of the book, if not the middle and beyond, because I wasn't quite sure where I wanted the book to go, like the scene-wise. So I just jumped to the scenes I was most excited about, and then I went through before the first read-through. So before I started editing, I went through and added in all the other scenes that needed to still be added in. My fourth tip, to find a way to keep track of your project or your progress. I like to do scene count and like chapter count. So if I know there's going to be 65 scenes in my novel, I use that as kind of a checklist. As I get done a scene, I mark it off. You can use word count. You can use time that you sit down to work on it. Word count for me gets a little dicey. Some projects I focus way too much on the word count, trying to hit that where I think the book should be. Other projects I focus too much because I think I'm writing too much. So I find working by scene or chapter, like checklists, work better than word count for me personally. But find whatever way works for you. Fifth tip is don't stress about hitting a huge word count. The draft will be as long as it needs to be when it's done. Now, this might be slightly different if you are traditionally publishing, because I know some publishers have set word counts of what they like per genre. I self-publish, so for me, word count doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, if you're writing a dark fantasy adventure series like I am, you're expecting the books to be longer than 30,000 words. But don't stress that your fantasy book isn't hitting that 100,000 word mark. It will be done when it's done. As long as it is a good story and the plot moves forward and it's at a good pace, it doesn't matter what the word count is. My sixth tip is take breaks to recharge and step away from your project. Whether that is when you're done drafting it and you're getting ready to go to the editing phase, take a break, breathe, think of something else. Or I even have it where there are times where I need to take a weekend away or a week away from the project, recharge, focus on another creative project, or just not think creatively for a few days. Typically, I hit that point if I'm forcing myself to work too much on my project, as in I'm not doing anything else throughout the day but writing when I have the chance to write. I am a stay-at-home, work-from-home mom of 2 toddlers. One of them is 3 and one of them is 1.5. So I don't have a lot of time to sit and work. So when I have those pockets, I typically try to force myself, or push myself, I should say, to get as much done as I can. And sometimes that can be detrimental and lead to burnout. So I find I have to take a weekend away or a day away from my project and just relax and recharge. My final tip is don't stress about the writing. Don't stress about how long it's taking you. Don't stress about how slow you're writing or any plot holes that you find. Make note of those, but don't stress about them. Stress about deadlines. That one is easier said than done, especially if you have actual deadlines. All of my deadlines are typically self-imposed because I am a fully indie author. I am an indie author, so I don't have deadlines from big publishing houses or from editors or that. I work on my own timeline. I do still try to give myself deadlines, but a lot of those deadlines don't hold up. Those are my 7 drafting tips. They are all relatively easy and simple. If you find they work for you, awesome, cool. If you find they don't work for you, also awesome, cool. These videos aren't supposed to be this is how you're supposed to do it, this is the only way, because when it comes to writing, when it comes to any creative endeavor, there are so many paths to take. You just have to find the one that works for you. These tips I find work great for me. If they work great for you, awesome. If not, ignore the ones that don't work. That being said, I will end the video here. Check out my other YouTube channel if you're interested in cleaning motivation, cooking, baking, and just a day in the life style videos. Also, I will leave the Amazon link to my full-length novel, Draco and Luna Sorrow. It is book 1 in the Draco and Luna series, as well as my Fiverr account where I do editing for manuscripts. I do developmental editing and manuscript critiques and short story edits and blurb edits. So I will leave all that linked down below.